I thought I was living a rom-com, falling head over heels for a charming, exotic man. But it turned out I was starring in a chilling psychological thriller, and the monster was already sleeping in my bed. What happened next has left me shattered, furious, and utterly bewildered. It all started 8 months ago at this bustling international street food festival downtown. My roommate Bridget and I were on a culinary adventure, trying everything from spicy noodles to sweet crepes. That's where I met Tiago. He was working a stand, selling these incredible pastries from his home country in South America. I'm keeping some details vague for anonymity. He had this accent that just melted me. And to be honest, I thought he was incredibly handsome right from the start. We got to talking while I waited for my order. He was so attentive, making eye contact, laughing at my jokes. When he handed me my pastries, there was an extra one, and tucked inside the napkin was his number. Seriously, it felt like something right out of a movie, and I was completely smitten. We texted for a few days, then started dating. At first, everything was absolutely perfect. He was unbelievably sweet, always showering me with compliments, always wanting to spend time together. He'd tell me fascinating stories about his culture, how different things were where he came from. His English was great, but that charming accent, I found it irresistibly attractive. After about a month, he started staying over at my small one-bedroom apartment more and more often. I've worked really hard for this place. I've been fully independent since I was 20, and I'm genuinely proud of it. My job in office administration isn't my dream, but it's stable, and I've always been open with Tiago about my ambitions. I told him early on that I have plans, that I wasn't going to spend my entire life in this role, because I come from a family where you earn everything you have. Within a couple of months, Tiago was pretty much living with me full-time. It happened so gradually, I didn't even question it. One day, all his stuff was just there, and he wasn't going back to his own place. At the time, I was actually thrilled. I really liked him, and I genuinely believed we were building something real, something meaningful together. The first major red flag, looking back, was that he never once offered to contribute to rent or utilities. And like a total idiot, I ignored it. Around the 3-month mark, I finally worked up the courage to bring it up. He immediately launched into this whole explanation. I still have no stable income. You know how hard it is with a visa. And I understood truly. Immigration is incredibly complex, and I wanted to be supportive, to be the kind of girlfriend who stood by her partner through tough times. But then the subtle comment started. You swear a lot. Women from my country don't talk like that. The way you dress is very American. You're so loud when you laugh. Initially, I brushed them off as cultural differences, just something to navigate in an international relationship. But they started coming more frequently, and they grew sharper, more critical. He'd say things that made my stomach clench. You wouldn't survive with us back home. Women there know when to be quiet. Or he'd make faces at me across the dinner table when I was talking with his friends. Meanwhile, our financial situation was only getting worse. He'd pick up an occasional gig doing food delivery, but most days when I was at work, he'd just be sitting at my desk playing games on my laptop. I'd come home after a grueling 9-hour day, physically and mentally exhausted, only for him to look up, smile, and ask, "So what's for dinner?" And somehow, I just made dinner. Every single night. Looking back, I still can't believe how completely unbalanced things became. About a week ago, I finally snapped. One night, I just looked at him and said, "Tiago, I'm getting kind of tired of carrying all the expenses by myself." And oh my God, his reaction was absolutely explosive. He immediately got defensive, his voice tight with feigned indignation. "So, you just don't trust me? I thought we were building something together, and you're counting pennies like a shopkeeper?" I felt an immediate wave of crushing guilt, like I was the villain for even bringing it up. He refused to speak to me for 2 whole days, and I, unbelievably, actually apologized to him. Seriously, what was wrong with me? The answer, of course, was nothing. What was wrong was him. Fast forward to this past weekend. Tiago told me his parents were in town, and he wanted to have them over for dinner. I was genuinely excited to meet them, to finally connect with his family. But then the instructions started pouring out. Please don't joke too loudly. Don't be rude. Be polite and respectful. My mother is very traditional. I spent the entire day cleaning my apartment until it sparkled, cooking 3 different dishes. One from his country took me forever to figure out. I was a wreck, stressing over every detail, desperate to make a good impression. By the time they arrived at 7 p.m., I was utterly exhausted, but I plastered on my brightest smile. His parents were polite. That's the only word I can use. They smiled and nodded at me, but something felt off from the very moment they walked through my door. Almost immediately, they started speaking to Tiago in their language. And it wasn't just for a quick private exchange. They spoke their language for what felt like 80% of the entire evening. Even when sitting directly across from me at the dinner table that I had spent hours preparing. I tried so hard to stay positive, to remain engaged, smiling and nodding along like an idiot, understanding absolutely nothing. Tiago would occasionally translate something for me, but it was always vague, dismissive even. Oh, they're talking about our cousin's new baby, or they're discussing some family business. Midway through dinner, I suddenly realized I'd forgotten to get cream and lemons for the dessert I had planned. I told Tiago I needed to run to the corner store, assuring them I'd be right back. They all nodded, barely breaking their conversation, as I grabbed my keys and left. When I returned about 15 minutes later, they seemed to switch topics abruptly, their voices a little too loud, a little too jovial. The rest of the evening continued in the same bizarre way, me trying desperately to connect, them speaking their language, and Tiago acting strangely different around his parents. They finally left around 11 p.m., and I was so emotionally drained, I just collapsed in a bed. The next morning, as I was making coffee, a memory suddenly resurfaced, a jolt in my brain. A year and a half ago, my laptop and some jewelry had been stolen during a break-in at my apartment. After that, I installed 2 small security cameras, one in the living room, facing the front door, and one in the kitchen. They aren't hidden. They're just regular small cameras on shelves I bought from Amazon. I don't check them regularly anymore. They're just there for peace of mind. But standing there in my kitchen, a chilling thought crystallized. I could probably hear what they were saying while I was at the store. At first, I felt a strange pang of guilt, like maybe this was an invasion of privacy. But then my resolve hardened. 1, it's my apartment. 2, the cameras aren't hidden. They've been there since before I even met him. And 3, they were literally sitting in my home, talking about something while I wasn't there. So I grabbed my phone, my fingers trembling slightly, and pulled up the security app. I quickly found the footage from last night, around 8:30 p.m. when I had gone to the store. Initially, it was just more of the same, them talking in their language, eating my food in my apartment. But then, about 2 minutes after I left, the entire conversation shifted. I could tell from their body language, from the sudden change in their tones, that something significant had changed. I couldn't understand a single word, but I could feel the mood darken, even through the screen. His mother was speaking more animatedly, gesturing toward the kitchen where I had been cooking all day. His father was nodding, occasionally letting out a low chuckle. And Tiago was smiling and nodding along with whatever they were saying. I stared at the screen, a growing dread churning in my stomach. What was I supposed to do with this footage if I couldn't understand them? Then I remembered this online service I've used for work, one that transcribes and translates audio. My hands were shaking as I downloaded the clip and uploaded it. About an hour later, the English transcript landed in my inbox. And guys, I wish to God I had never translated it. The words burned into my eyes, etched themselves into my memory. His mother had said, clear as day, she's not very pretty, but she cleans up after you well. She laughed, a cruel, cutting sound, and added, well, she knows her place at least. His father replied, she's like a free housekeeper. Smart choice, son. And Tiago, the man I had been supporting, cooking for, cleaning up after for months, the man I thought I loved, he laughed. And he said, she's useful. The apartment is always clean. Food is always ready. American girls are so easy to manipulate. Just make them feel bad about asking for anything, and they'll give you everything. There was more, so much more, much, much worse. But I can't even bring myself to type it out without feeling physically sick all over again. They mocked my appearance, my job, my apartment, even the food I had spent all day preparing. all while sitting at my table, in my home, eating my food. The most painful, stomach-churning part was that throughout their entire conversation, there wasn't a single moment where Tiago defended me. Not once did he say, "Don't talk about her like that," or "I actually care about her." Instead, he participated. He laughed. He agreed. I sat there staring at my phone screen for what felt like an eternity. My mind was reeling, replaying every one of those critical comments. All the times he'd made me feel like I wasn't good enough. It all snapped into a horrifying focus. He never respected me. I was just convenient. A free ride. He's still asleep in my bed as I'm typing this, completely oblivious. He doesn't know that I know. I'm sitting here in my kitchen, the very kitchen where his family laughed at me, trying to figure out what the hell to do next. I know deep down that I need to end this. I know I need to get him out of my apartment, out of my life, but a part of me, a dark, vengeful part, wants to confront him. I want to see his face, utterly stripped of that charming facade, when he realizes I understood every single awful word they said. Anyway, that's where I'm at right now. A woman who apparently spent 8 months being someone's free housekeeper while thinking she was in a loving relationship. I feel so incredibly stupid. By the way, if you're still with me through this absolute whirlwind of a story, please consider hitting that subscribe button. You won't miss the wild ride that's still to come, and your support means the world. Update. He just woke up and asked what I was doing. I managed to say, "I'm just checking emails," my voice surprisingly steady. He actually kissed the top of my head and is now in the shower. I think I'm going to start packing his things while he's in there. He will not spend another night in my home. First update. First off, thank you to every single one of you who commented on my last post. I honestly didn't expect such an outpouring of responses, and I read every single one, hiding in the bathroom yesterday morning. So, a lot has happened in the last 36 hours. I'm typing this from my friend Bridget's couch at like 2 a.m. because I couldn't sleep, and I needed to update you guys on everything. Where I left off yesterday, Tiago was in the shower, and I had just discovered the vile things he and his parents said about me. I was sitting there, feeling this weird, eerie calm. It was that kind of stillness you get when you're so utterly furious that all the noise inside you goes completely quiet. That feeling intensified when I heard the shower turn off. I put my phone down and walked straight to the bedroom. I pulled out 2 black garbage bags from under the sink and just started packing his stuff. Not neatly, not carefully. I was just shoving clothes, shoes, his stupid gaming headset, everything, into these bags with a frantic energy. There wasn't even that much because, honestly, he came into my life with basically nothing. I found a little box where I kept photos of us together. One's from that food truck festival where we met, a beach day from last summer, moments I had cherished. I ripped them all in half, feeling a strange satisfaction, and threw them in with his clothes. I was in the middle of emptying his drawer when he walked in, fresh from the shower, with just a towel around his waist. He stopped dead, his eyes widening as he took in the bags, the clothes scattered everywhere, and the cold, unyielding look on my face. At first, he seemed genuinely confused, asking, "What are you doing? Is something wrong?" His voice had this nervous edge I'd never heard before. When I didn't answer right away, he tried to reach out and touch my arm. I recoiled so fast, I accidentally knocked over the lamp on my nightstand. It didn't break, but the shade got a nasty dent. That's when I told him. My voice was low, devoid of emotion, but absolutely firm. I said I knew exactly what he and his parents said about me while I was at the store. I told him I had the footage from my security camera, that I had it translated, and that I knew he called me his personal housekeeper to his own family. The way his face changed was something I'll never forget. First, there was this split second of pure, unadulterated shock, then an instant frantic denial. He tried to say I must have misunderstood the translation, that I didn't understand the cultural context, that they were just joking. When he realized I wasn't buying any of his desperate excuses, he switched tactics. Completely. He got angry, his voice rising, yelling about how I was spying on him, how I had invaded his privacy by recording his private conversation with his parents. All in my own home, on cameras that were visibly mounted on the wall, and had been there since before I even met him. I remained eerily calm, just continuing to pack his stuff while he ranted and raged. That seemed to make him even angrier. He suddenly grabbed my wrist hard, digging his nails in, and pulled me away from the bags, shouting that I was crazy, that I was overreacting, that this was why women from his country were better. They didn't act hysterical over nothing. That's when my calm shattered. I yanked my arm back so hard that his nails scraped my skin, leaving angry red marks. I shoved him away from me, my own voice now shaking with pure fury, and told him to get out of my apartment. I said he had 20 minutes to get dressed, take his stuff, and leave, or I was calling the police. He called me a crazy B*TCH and said I'd be nothing without him. Then came the part that actually made me laugh, a bitter, hollow sound. He said I was throwing away the best thing that ever happened to me. The best thing? A man who mocked me to his parents, who contributed nothing, who treated me like a servant. I looked him dead in the eye and told him that was rich coming from someone who'd been living off me for months. I reminded him that everything he'd been enjoying was actually mine. My apartment, my food, my Netflix, my everything. I told him he was a parasite, not a boyfriend. That hit a nerve. His face turned an alarming shade of red, and for a terrifying second, I thought he might actually hit me. Instead, he snatched the bags I'd packed, stormed into the bathroom to get dressed, and came out a few minutes later, fully clothed but still seething with rage. As he was leaving, he kept trying to have the last word, yelling that I'd regret this, that I'd call him crying in a few days, begging him to come back. He swore no one else would put up with me. I just opened the door wider and pointed out, my silence a more potent weapon than any words. The last thing he did before finally storming out was knock over the little table by the door, sending my keys and mail flying across the floor. He slammed the door so hard that my neighbor across the hall opened their door, looking alarmed, to check if everything was okay. After he left, I just sank to the floor of my living room and sat there for what felt like an hour. My wrist had these angry red marks where he'd grabbed me, and they were already starting to bruise. That was when it truly hit me how bad things had gotten, how I'd allowed someone to treat me that way for months. I cried for a while, not really sad tears, more like a turbulent mix of relief and pure, unadulterated anger. Then practical mode kicked in. I texted my friend Bridget and gave her a quick, breathless rundown of what had happened. She immediately offered to come over, but I needed some time alone first, just to breathe. I went around the apartment, systematically gathering anything Tiago might have accidentally left behind. I found his spare phone charger, a couple of books, and a jacket in the closet. I put them all in another bag by the door. Then I called a locksmith. It cost me $275 for an emergency Sunday service call, but by 6 p.m., I had brand new locks on my door. Worth every single penny, to be honest. Around 8 p.m., the text started. First, it was just one, "You're making a big mistake." I didn't respond. Then, "I left my charger and some other things. I need to come get them." Then, a furious, "Are you seriously ignoring me? After everything I've done for you, everything he'd done for me?" I almost threw my phone across the room. By 10 p.m., the tone had shifted. "I'm sorry if you misunderstood what we were saying. It's a cultural thing. You wouldn't understand. Then, can we please just talk about this? You're overreacting." Shortly after, Bridget arrived, armed with wine and takeout, my hero. She sat with me while I showed her the video and the translation. She was absolutely livid, like I literally had to talk her down from going to find Tiago herself. She stayed until midnight, helping me delete every photo of him from my phone and untagging myself from posts with him on Instagram. This morning, Monday, I woke up to 17 missed calls and about 30 texts from Tiago. They ranged from angry, "You'll regret this," to falsely apologetic, "I'm sorry, please let's talk," to shamelessly manipulative, "I have nowhere to go. You know my situation." I blocked his number immediately. Then I remembered he could still contact me on Instagram and WhatsApp, so I blocked him there too. Then Facebook. Then even LinkedIn, just to be safe. I called in sick to work because my wrist was sore and honestly, I just couldn't face people yet. My boss was incredibly understanding. She just said to take the day and feel better. Around noon, there was a knock on my door. I checked the peephole, and surprise, surprise, it was Tiago. I stayed completely silent, my heart pounding, just sitting on my couch, watching him through the peephole like some weird, reverse stalker situation. After about 10 agonizing minutes, he finally left. I texted Bridget again, and she insisted I come stay with her for a few days just to be safe. That's where I am now. I also keep thinking about all those little red flags I ignored over the months. How he never contributed financially. The insidious way he criticized how I talked, dressed, and laughed. How he made me feel guilty for simply asking for basic fairness. The fact that he never once invited me to hang out with his friends without him. How he subtly belittled my career goals. Each one seems so glaringly obvious now, like enormous flashing neon signs, but I missed them all. I don't even know why. I guess I was just so completely caught up in the idea of this charming, exotic boyfriend that I didn't want to see the crushing reality. Oh, and one more thing. His cousin, the one he's actually close with, messaged me on Instagram this afternoon. Apparently, Tiago told his entire family that I threw him out because I was mentally unstable and jealous of his culture. His cousin, thankfully, didn't believe him and wanted to know what really happened. I sent her the translated transcript of what they said about me. She was utterly horrified and immediately apologized for her family's disgusting behavior. At least there's one decent person in that crowd. So that's where I am right now, sleeping on a friend's couch, having blocked my boyfriend of 8 months on every single platform imaginable, and trying to figure out what happens next. I've never had a relationship end this dramatically before. Part of me is terrified he'll keep trying to contact me or even show up at my work. He knows where I work. Another part is just incredibly sad about the whole thing. Not because I miss him, but because I feel so incredibly stupid for not seeing this sooner. Bridget thinks I should file a police report about him grabbing my wrist, just to have it on record in case things escalate. I'm not sure if that's necessary, but maybe she's right to be cautious. Second update. First off, thank you so much to everyone who commented on my last post with advice and support. You guys were absolutely right about so many things, especially about being careful with Tiago and documenting everything. So, after spending 3 nights on Bridget's couch, I was slowly starting to feel a little more stable, a little more like myself. The ugly bruises on my wrist had faded to this gross yellowish color, but didn't hurt anymore. I hadn't heard from Tiago since blocking him everywhere, and I was finally starting to believe that maybe, just maybe, the worst was behind me. I even went back to work on Wednesday, and my coworkers were incredibly supportive about me taking a couple of days off. Yesterday morning, Saturday, I woke up early and decided it was finally time to go back to my own apartment. Bridget offered to come with me just to make sure everything was okay, but I told her I'd be fine. I stopped for coffee on the way home, checking my surroundings the entire time like some paranoid spy movie character, which made me laugh despite the tension. When I got back to my place, everything was exactly how I'd left it. I spent the morning in a furious deep clean, changing sheets, scrubbing the bathroom, rearranging furniture, basically trying to reclaim my space and banish every last reminder of Tiago. I even burned some sage that my sister gave me last Christmas. Yes, I know it's cliché, but honestly, it made me feel a tiny bit better. Around noon, I figure I should check in with my parents. We usually talk on weekends, and I hadn't yet told them about the breakup. My mom and dad live about 40 minutes outside the city, in a house where I grew up. I thought about calling, but then decided it might be nice to see them in person. I texted my mom to ask if I could come over for dinner, and she replied with a simple, "Yes, we need to talk." That was weird. My mom is the queen of emojis and exclamation points in texts. A serious, unadorned, "we need to talk" message is definitely not her style. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up, which only made me more anxious. I figured maybe she was just busy cooking or something. I arrived at my parents' house around 4 p.m. As soon as I walked in, I could feel the heavy silence, the palpable tension. My mom was sitting stiffly at the kitchen table, not getting up to hug me like she usually does. My dad was standing by the counter, making coffee with his back to me, his shoulders rigid. The atmosphere in the room was so thick, I almost turned around and left. I asked what was going on, and my mom just looked at me with this expression I couldn't quite read. A mix of concern and something else. She asked if I was doing okay mentally these days. I was completely confused, my heart starting to pound, until she dropped the bomb. Tiago had come to see them yesterday. He went to my parents' house. Apparently, he showed up unannounced Friday morning, looking all polished and put together, the picture of concern. He apologized for coming without warning, but said he was worried sick about me. He told them I'd been acting erratically, that I'd become paranoid and was secretly recording him. He claimed I had thrown him out in a fit of rage, had physically attacked him, and that he was deeply concerned about my mental health. He even showed them a scratch on his face, one I definitely did not give him, and implied I had done it during our fight. He painted this whole despicable picture of me as an unstable girlfriend who turned violent when he supposedly tried to help me. My mom was watching me carefully as she told me all this, clearly trying to gauge my reaction. I could tell she wasn't completely buying his fabricated story. She knows me better than that. But she was concerned enough not to immediately dismiss it either. I sat down at the table, feeling like the floor had just dropped out from under me. I took a deep breath, trying desperately to stay calm, as I explained what actually happened. The dinner with his parents, the security footage that had been there since long before I even met him, what I overheard them saying about me, and how he had grabbed my wrist when I confronted him. My mom still looked skeptical, not because she didn't believe me, but because the entire situation seemed so utterly bizarre, so outside the realm of normal human behavior. She kept asking if I was sure I hadn't misunderstood the translation, if there might have been some cultural misunderstanding. That's when I pulled out my phone. I still had the video clips saved, along with screenshots of the translation. I handed my phone to my mom and watched her face change, minute by agonizing minute, as she read through it all. By the time she finished, she looked absolutely furious. Not at me, but at Tiago. My dad, who had been quietly listening this whole time, finally came over to look at my phone, too. He's usually pretty chill, a calm presence. But as he read the translation, his face got redder and redder. When he saw the part where Tiago's father called me a free housekeeper, and Tiago laughed about it, my dad actually swore, something he rarely does. The atmosphere in the kitchen completely shifted. My mom got up and wrapped me in a fierce hug, apologizing for doubting me even for a second. She said she should have known better than to listen to that manipulative little weasel. Her exact words, which, despite everything, actually made me laugh a little. My dad was quiet, but in a way that was actually more scary than if he'd been yelling. He just asked what time Tiago usually finished work and where exactly he delivered food. I told him, not really thinking much of it at the time. And then we tried to have a normal dinner, but my dad kept checking his watch, his jaw set, and seemed completely distracted throughout the meal. Around 7 p.m., he suddenly stood up, grabbed his keys, and said he needed to go out for a bit. My mom tried to ask where he was going, but he just said he'd be back soon, and left. My mom and I looked at each other, both realizing at the same time what he was probably doing. I immediately tried calling my dad, but he didn't pick up. I started freaking out, imagining him confronting Tiago, things getting completely out of hand. My mom was worried too, but kept repeating that my dad wasn't stupid. He wouldn't do anything that would get him into trouble. We sat there for what felt like 2 agonizing hours, repeatedly trying to call him, getting more anxious by the minute. Finally, around 9:30 p.m., we heard his car pull up in the driveway. He walked in looking completely normal, like he'd just gone out for groceries or something mundane. When we both started demanding to know where he'd been, he calmly sat down and said he'd gone to find Tiago at the delivery place where I told him he worked. He waited until Tiago came out after his shift and then approached him. According to my dad, he kept his cool, though I'm not sure I completely believe that. He told Tiago that he knew everything, that he'd seen the video, read the translations, and knew about Tiago grabbing my wrist. He told him in no uncertain terms to stay away from me and my family, period. My dad said Tiago tried to defend himself at first, insisting there was a misunderstanding. But when my dad mentioned the specific, vile things that were said on the video, Tiago's face apparently went white. My dad then told him that if he ever contacted me or came near our family again, there would be consequences. He didn't elaborate on what those consequences would be, and to be honest, I'm not sure I want to know. My dad recounted his final words to Tiago, delivered with a quiet menace. You were sitting at our table, eating our food, And then you call my daughter a maid who was only good for cleaning up after you. If you ever speak about her that way again, or if you spread any more lies about her, you'll regret it. According to my dad, Tiago didn't say another word. He just stood there, utterly shocked, as my dad turned and walked away. A part of me wishes I could have seen his face in that moment. When my dad finished telling us what happened, I felt this weird, overwhelming mix of emotions. Relief that someone had stood up for me so fiercely, a deep embarrassment that my parents had to get involved in my relationship drama at age 26, and a lingering anxiety about how Tiago might react next. I ended up staying the night at my parents' house, mostly because it was late and I was emotionally drained, but also because I just felt safer there. This morning at breakfast, my mom suggested I might want to file for a restraining order, especially given Tiago's disturbing pattern of escalation. First showing up at my apartment, then going to my parents behind my back. I'm seriously considering it, but the process seems complicated, and I'm not sure if what's happened so far is enough for a judge to grant one. Oh, and I got a text from Tiago's cousin, the one who messaged me on Instagram just before last night. Apparently, Tiago called his mother after my dad confronted him, and she's furious. Not at my dad, not at me, but at Tiago for embarrassing the family. His cousin also mentioned that Tiago has been crashing on different friends' couches since I kicked him out, and most of them are already tired of him. He lost his food delivery gig because he kept showing up late, and he's quickly running out of options. I'm going back to my apartment today. Bridget offered to come stay with me for a few days if I'm nervous about being alone, but I think I'll be okay. I've already let my building manager know about the situation, just in case Tiago tries to get into the building again. Also, as a random side note, but a very important one, I've started therapy. Had my first session yesterday morning before going to my parents. My therapist seems great, and she's already helping me understand how I ended up in this situation to begin with. Turns out I have some work to do on recognizing red flags earlier and setting better boundaries. I'll update again if anything significant happens, but hopefully this is the beginning of the end of this whole nightmare. Last update. Hey everyone, it's been almost 2 weeks since my last update, and I wasn't planning a post again because I hoped the whole Tiago saga was finally over. Turns out I was wrong, and yesterday, things reached a whole new level of crazy that I still can't fully process. So, after my dad confronted Tiago, things were actually pretty quiet for about 10 days. I moved back to my apartment, slowly started getting into a routine again, and was finally feeling more like myself. I even went on a little shopping spree and bought some new throw pillows and plants to truly reclaim my space. Small things, but they helped erase the lingering feeling of him being there. My therapist suggested I keep a journal of my feelings about everything that happened, which sounded super cheesy at first, but it's actually been helping. Writing things down makes them feel less overwhelming somehow. I've had 2 more sessions with her, and we've been unpacking why I let so many red flags slide for so long. Turns out I have some stuff to work through about my self-worth. Who knew, right? Anyway, work has been a welcome distraction. My coworkers don't know all the messy details, but they know I went through a bad breakup, and everyone's been really supportive. Yesterday started like any regular Tuesday. I woke up, did my skincare routine while listening to a podcast, grabbed coffee from the place down the street, and headed to the office. The morning was busy with back-to-back meetings, and I barely had time to check my phone until lunch. When I finally did check it around 1 p.m., I had 3 missed calls from an unknown number and a voicemail. I stepped into the break room to listen to it, and as soon as I heard the voice, my stomach dropped straight to my feet. It was Tiago, and he sounded not right. His words were slightly slurred, and he kept switching between English and his native language. From what I could understand, he was saying he needed to talk to me, that everything was falling apart, and that I owed him a conversation. I immediately deleted the voicemail and blocked the number, then texted Bridget to let her know he'd found a way to contact me again. She suggested I tell my office security, just as a precaution, which seemed like overkill at the time, but I decided to stop by the front desk anyway. Our building has 2 security guards. This older guy named Ron, who's been there forever and is like a comforting rock, and a younger woman named Alexis, who started a few months ago. I caught them between shifts and briefly explained that my ex might try to contact me at work and that I absolutely did not want to see him. They were super understanding and said they'd keep an eye out, which made me feel a bit better, a fragile shield against my growing anxiety. I went back to my desk and tried desperately to focus on work, but I kept checking the time, glancing nervously toward the elevator. By 4 p.m., I had convinced myself I was being paranoid. I mean, he'd left a weird voicemail, but that didn't mean he was actually going to show up, right? Around 4:30 p.m., I was in a small meeting with my team in one of the glass-walled conference rooms near the front of the office. We were discussing some upcoming project when I saw movement by the reception area. I glanced up, and there he was, Tiago, talking animatedly to Alexis at the front desk. My blood ran cold. I quickly told my team I needed to step out and discreetly texted Ron, who I knew was in the break room, to come to reception ASAP. I ducked behind a column, my heart hammering against my ribs, trying to decide what to do. While I was still frozen, I heard his voice get louder, more insistent. He was trying to move past Alexis, saying he just needed to talk to me for 5 minutes, that I was being childish by ignoring him. That's when Ron appeared, and thank God he did. Ron's this tall, broad-shouldered guy who used to be in the military, and he immediately positioned himself in front of Tiago, who instinctively took a step back. I couldn't hear everything they were saying, but I saw Ron pointing firmly toward the door, his stance making it crystal clear this wasn't negotiation. For a second, a fleeting hope, I thought Tiago might actually leave. He took a few steps back, still arguing, but less forcefully. Then, because the universe apparently decided I hadn't been through enough drama yet, Marcus, a kind, unassuming coworker, chose that exact moment to walk by me and ask if everything was okay. Tiago's head snapped in our direction, and when he saw me standing there with another guy, his entire demeanor changed in an instant. His face got this scary, intense look, a primal rage twisting his features, and he suddenly shoved past Ron, heading straight for us. Ron caught up to him in seconds, grabbing his arm to stop him. But Tiago was like a completely different person from the charming guy I met at the food festival. He was yelling now, loud enough for the entire office to hear, about how I'd ruined his life, how I'd turned everyone against him, how I was already moving on with this guy, meaning Marcus, who looked completely bewildered and terrified. People were spilling out of meeting rooms and standing up from their desks, gaping at the spectacle. I was frozen in place, mortified and utterly scared all at once. Marcus instinctively stepped slightly in front of me, which was kind, but also seemed to make Tiago even angrier. Tiago was still trying to get to me, with Ron valiantly blocking his way, when he started saying the most horrible, slanderous things. He called me a manipulative B*TCH who'd tricked him, said I'd been secretly recording him to ruin his life, that I'd attacked him and thrown him out on the street. Then, in a terrifying switch, he abruptly changed tactics completely, his voice breaking as he said he loved me, that he needed me, that he had nowhere to go. He started crying, actual tears streaming down his face, begging me to just talk to him, to give him another chance. Alexis had already called building security, and 2 more guards showed up just as Tiago made one final, desperate lunge toward me, breaking free from Ron momentarily. Marcus instinctively put his arm out to stop him, and Tiago actually took a wild swing at him, missing by mere inches. The security guards grabbed him immediately, one on each arm, and started physically removing him from the building while he continued yelling, alternating between venomous insults and pathetic pleas. As they dragged him toward the elevator, he looked over his shoulder at me one last time, his eyes burning with malice, and shouted that I'd regret this, that this wasn't over. Then my boss appeared beside me, her face pale, and quietly suggested I take the rest of the day off. She walked me to my desk, waited patiently while I gathered my things, and then had Ron escort me to my car, just to be safe. The whole time I felt like I was moving through a thick, disorienting fog, like this couldn't possibly be my actual life, my reality. I called Bridget from the parking garage, shaking so much I could barely hold my phone. She met me at my apartment 30 minutes later, takeout in hand, a silent, comforting presence. I told her everything while we sat on my couch, and she stayed over again last night, sleeping in my bedroom while I took the couch because I was too wired to sleep anyway. This morning, I woke up to a text from my boss saying to take today off too, and that HR wanted to meet with me tomorrow to discuss implementing some additional security measures. Marcus also texted to check if I was okay, which was really decent of him considering he almost got punched by my crazy ex. I decided, finally, to call the police and file a report, something I probably should have done when Tiago first grabbed my wrist. The officer who took my statement was understanding. She said that while his behavior definitely warranted concern, they couldn't arrest him just for showing up at my workplace and making a scene. But she did help me start the process for a restraining order, which I'm following through with today. I also got another message from Tiago's cousin. Apparently, after the scene in my office, Tiago went on some kind of bender, posting a bunch of cryptic, angry stuff on his Instagram stories about betrayal and revenge. He blocked me, but mutual friends had screenshot everything. His cousin is genuinely worried about his mental state and apologized again for what her family did. And then, the news that finally allowed me to breathe a little deeper. His cousin said his parents have finally intervened. They booked him a one-way ticket back to their country that leaves tomorrow. They've apparently told him he has no choice. They're cutting him off completely if he doesn't come home. His cousin thinks he'll actually go because he's running out of friends to crash with and has absolutely no money left. I've triple-checked that all my doors and windows are locked, and Bridget is staying another night, just to be safe. So, that's where things stand right now. I'm still processing everything that's happened, still a little on edge, feeling the echoes of fear and betrayal. But beneath it all, there's a growing sense of immense relief, and I'm more certain than ever that I made the right choice in ending things. If his cousin confirms he actually gets on that plane tomorrow, I'll finally be able to breathe a true, unfettered sigh of peace. This whole nightmare is hopefully, finally, almost over. Have you ever had a relationship unravel in such a public, shocking way? Or found yourself ignoring major red flags because you were so desperate for a connection? Tell me your thoughts or similar experiences in the comments below. I'm truly interested to hear what you think.